Hello everyone, hope you're doing fine. This is our first video session on Thinking in Pine series. Before we start our demonstration, I'd like to explain a few things about our initiative. In order to help trading community and PineScript developers, we have started this new series of short videos called Thinking in Pine. As part of this program, we try to include 5 to 10 minutes of videos dedicated to explaining particular concept or unique implementation of PineScript. We have our own list of topics to be covered. However, if you have something in your mind, if you're not able to understand particular concept of PineScript or struck at implementing few things, please reach out to us. If the subject is generic and benefits wider audience of coders, we're happy to include that in our list of videos to be made or prioritize this or the other topics. With this, let's start with our current session on varip, and regular variables. Okay, so the var keyword here is it's a bit confusing when I first started with Pinecode, the PineScript. So because I'm familiar with other languages such as JavaScript, where var means a generic variable, but in the context of PineScript, var is not a generic variable; it's a special variable. So let's get on with an implementation or example here. So in this example, what we do is we'll try to implement OBV indicator. So there is also a built-in OBV, which is ta.obv, which calculates the OBV values. And we try to calculate this, and we try to develop this indicator by using these variables or in order to demonstrate these variables. So the logic of OBV is pretty simple. So the logic will be something like this. So if the close is greater than previous close, so add volume to BV indicator. Or let's do this. It starts with zero initialize. So the OBV indicator starts with zero always. Okay. So and then on every bar, if the close price is greater than previous close, the volume gets added to OBV. And if the close price is less than previous close, remove volume from OBV indicator, right? So that's how it works. So the resulting series of OBV, after adding and removing the volume based on the close price, that gets plotted on the screen. Okay, so this is what it's this is how it's calculated. So when you save this and when you apply this indicator, right now I'm only plotting the built-in OBV. You can see that built-in OBV is being plotted here. So now let's try to calculate the same thing with our variables. So volume by sign. So this is the variable which I created. So what it does is it checks whether the change in close price is positive or negative. If the change in price is positive, the math dot sign will result in +1. If the change in close price is negative, then the math dot sign will result in -1. So I've also added non-zero default value of 0, because for the very first bar, ta dot change of close will be na, will result in null or na, because on a very first wall there is no previous close price to compare, right? So because of that, the initial value will be 0. Okay, so and then star volume. So that's what I've done here. So now we need to add this value to the current indicator on every bar. So let's create a generic variable, which is OBV by regular. It's initialized with 0.0. And then, as per the logic, what we're doing here is um, plus the OBV indicator plus volume by sign. Sorry, not volume by sign, just volume by sign. Okay, so what we're doing here is OBV regular plus volume by sign. So just adding the volume by sign to OBV indicator on every bar. So if we print this, should we get the same result after a.obv? Let's see that. So I'll say this and look at this value here, which is plotted in blue, and the actual built-in OBV is plotted in yellow. So you see this here, OBV by regular variable is far less than OBV built-in. So something is going wrong, something is not right. You can also observe one more thing. This OBV by regular variable is equal to volume here, right? So any bar, if you go here, the volume will be equal to the OBV by regular variable. Why is that? That's because this variable here gets initialized on every bar separately. So this whatever we are adding, it will not add back to the previous bar value, but it actually creates a new variable on every bar, and it just adds the volume. That's why we always see that this is equal to volume. So it can be equal to plus volume or minus volume based on the bar color. If the close price is lesser than the previous close, it will be negative volume. Otherwise it is positive volume, right? So how to fix this? So one way to fix this is, we can access historical value. So we already created this, so we have a regular variable. So what do? You can also add it to nz again of PV regular of previous bar. So this is not an array operator again. So what it does is, it adds to the previous, it actually gets the previous value of OPV by regular. So as I mentioned before, this variable is calculated on every bar separately. So OPV regular by regular of 1 means that it's the previous bar value. So if this is the current bar value, this will be the previous bar value. So in this, by doing this, what happens, right? Every bar, it gets added to the previous value. So if you look at this now, you can see that these both values are matching fine. Okay, so the next example is to demonstrate varip, var, sorry. So we can achieve this same thing by var and not by doing all these things. So let's do the same thing in var, right? So here I declare a var variable. So I mentioned that var is a different type of variable. It's not a regular variable, right? So what happens with var is, it gets initialized only once. So it gets initialized on the first bar, and it won't initialize again, it won't reset the value to 0 on every bar. So in case of a regular variable, what happens is, on every bar it gets reset to 0 here because it gets initialized on every bar. But in case of var, it doesn't happen that way. So it gets the value 0 at the start and then preserves the value when it moves to the next bar. So due to this, here we don't need to consider the previous value at all. Like how we are doing it here, the previous OBV by regular value, we're adding it here. We don't need to do that because the OBV by var already has the previous value. So what I'm doing here, I'm just adding the volume by sign here. So if I do this, it will produce a result similar to this. So let's try and see. Okay, as you see here, OB by var variable is also 1856.56, which is same as this one, right? So in case of var variable, it remembers the value when you pass from one bar to another bar. In case of regular variable, that doesn't happen that way. In case of regular variable, it start afresh on every bar. So if you want to keep the previous value, you need to do it manually. But in case of var, you don't have to do that. So you can just keep adding the values, or reducing the values as per the rule on every bar. Okay, so the next is the example of varip. Varip is another special variable that is only important in a real-time bars. So varip doesn't make much sense in a historical bars. That's mainly because varip works on the ticks, on every ticks. Varip gets recalculated, or it remembers the state of every tick. So because of that, you don't need historical bars doesn't have ticks in trading view. So because of that, the calculation will happen, will not yield anything special in a historical bars. For example, let me try this way, and let me just do change it to varip. So this actually works similarly. So varip, just take it as varip and varip and varip. Okay, so make it as red. Okay, so this will produce the same output as var, because on a historical bar, the tick is same. Like a tick always refers to a close price of only one tick per each bar. But if you see this, it's difference, it's diverged in the current bar. You can see that because what's happening is it's adding on every bar, right? It's adding this value on every bar. So because of that, on a current bar, it keeps going up, right? So It's not a right implementation here because it's not right to keep adding the same values again and again on every tick. So let's use this varip to calculate the OBV of based on the ticks. Okay, so I've already coded here. I'll just explain what has been done. So similarly, varip initial variable, I've initialized it as into 0.0, and also I'm creating two other variables to store the close price and volumes, right? The last price and last volume, right? It's always it goes to close and volume, and I'll reset the last volume to zero on a new bar. Whenever a new bar comes, I'm going to reset it to zero. So and then not I will not do the logging, just to remove this. So the same logic, I'm going to apply the same logic here, but there's a slight change. Instead of using this volume by sign, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to calculate on my own. So mat dot sign close minus last price. So the last price contains close of the previous tick here. So if you see this, the close of the previous tick, right? And then again, so this gets initialized only on the first time, right? It doesn't get initialized again. So it's only get initialized once, and the next initialization happens only if you use colon equals to symbols to initialize the value. So what I'm doing here is, so I'm getting the difference between the last price and the current price, and using it to reduce the sign, right? And then once it is done, I'm setting the value to the current price so that on every tick, it gets the last price gets stored, and it is used in the next tick to identify the value of close prices, right? And similarly, volume and last volume, right? Last volume is the last volume here, and the volume here, it gets initialized to first volume, and then what happens is we try to get the value difference between the current volume and the last volume on every bar, right? Once this is calculated, what we set the last volume to current volume. It will be used in the next bar or next tick, right? How this code works is, it works in a similar way to this present code here with var in historical bars, because for historical bars, one candle or one bar will have one tick, right? So it works in a similar way. But what happens in the current bar, it actually calculates the values between the ticks. So and keeps adding the values based on the ticks. So I'll uncomment this code and update again. So if you know that, if you see this, the same thing happens here too. All the historical matches, all the historical bars match perfectly fine. And if you see the last bar, so last bar it deviates. So all the previous bars, you see that it's same. It's exactly same, all four values. The last bar, if you see the varip value here, it deviates from the rest because that gets calculated per every tick, whereas this one is calculated only based on the close price, right? So it doesn't remember each tick. When you're using a var or regular variable, it doesn't remember each tick, but varip remembers each tick. So when you use varip, the real time bar will keep diverging from what is the when you use the regular variables. So if you are using varip, that's only for doing something or calculating something in the real time bar. So you cannot rely on any values calculated through varip in the historical bars. Okay, so that's all about today's session. Please let me know if you have any questions. And again, as mentioned before, if you want me to cover any other topics in PyScript, please leave a comment or please reach out to me. We'll consider that. Thanks very much. Bye.